Now, a former Israeli soldier discusses his group's allegations of human rights abuses by the Israeli military in the West Bank and Gaza. The forum also includes a photo exhibit. It's about an hour and 30 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you on behalf of the Foundation for Middle East Peace. My name is Phil Wilcox, and on behalf of our two co-sponsors, Britzedek v. Shalom, their Washington director, Rob Levy, is here, and Americans for Peace Now. Laura Friedman, where are you? There you are. I think you all know, we know it as Americans as well, that in every society, in times of crisis, there are always huge pressures to follow the leader, and sometimes independent thinking, dissent, is difficult. But if there isn't this kind of counter movement, problems get worse. There are always happily courageous people who are willing to go against the grain, and that's certainly the case in Israel, where a very large body of Israeli citizens in all walks of life had been working for many years to change policies of occupation and settlement, and who are trying to mobilize what is, I would hope, a kind of silent majority there in favor of change. And indeed, some of the clearest and most impressive analysis and writing on this conflict has come from such Israelis. One group that stands out as a voice for conscience in Israeli society is a group called Breaking the Silence. These are former active duty Israeli Defense Force soldiers who have come together and created an extraordinary presentation. Dozens of photographs taken by soldiers during their experiences in the West Bank. Breaking the Silence has also taken the testimony of over 500 Israeli soldiers. This impressive collection of photographs is being shown in a long-term exhibit in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania that opened on Saturday, and there will be a similar long-term exhibit at Harvard University sometime soon. I want to thank especially Brad Brooks Rubin, a Washingtonian, who has been very active in his support for Breaking the Silence, and it is he who has brought the group here to Washington. Brad, could you wave your hand? There he is back there. Well, these photographs, the work of Breaking the Silence, are really a testimony to courage, to leadership, to moral vision, and in dramatizing the moral cost of this conflict to Israelis and to Palestinians. They're really providing a great service. So I'm happy and proud to introduce to you Yehuda Shaul. Yehuda is the man who created Breaking the Silence and gathered around him a very large group of colleagues. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Yehuda.
Thank you. I'll just first of all say thank you for all the sponsors, Foundation for Middle East Peace, Peace Now, Britzedek, Brad, that help us do this tour. I'll try just to start with from where I come from, short background of what I've been through. and speak for like 35, 40 minutes with a slideshow of some pictures from the collection of Breaking the Silence, and then we'll open it to questions and answers. Just a few words about myself. I'm 25 years old, Jerusalemite, an observant Orthodox Jew. Grew up in a modern Orthodox family who came from North America to Israel. Just like every Israeli, when I was, basically even before I grew up in a right-wing background, you can call it, I went to a high school in a settlement, which is kind of the background that you don't see people doing this kind of work coming from, mostly. And when I reached the age of 18, I joined the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. In Israel, we have a draft, everybody joins. Probably the most important thing to understand is that when I reached the age of 18, I didn't have a question whether to serve in the IDF or not. The only question I had in front of me is whether I'll get into an elite commando unit or I'll just be a regular combat officer. Whether I'll be an officer or just be a regular combat soldier. These were the options that I had in front of me. And in 2001, I ended up being just a regular combat soldier. Joined the military for 3 years, served as a soldier, commander, ended my service as a company sergeant. This is me. In the Western Wall, like a month after I was drafted, we swear loyalty to the country, to the military. Someone recognize me here?
All right.
Final ceremony of my sergeant course. So I did 3 years in the military. 2 years out of them were in the West Bank. Out of these 2 years, I did a year and 2 months in Hebron, which is the second largest Palestinian city in the south of the West Bank. I don't think in a kind of crowd like this I have to speak about the map and what is the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So just a few words of kind of things that brought us to start Breaking the Silence. During my military service, I did what all soldiers do in the occupied territories. Standing in checkpoints, invading houses, arrest operations, patrol, whatever you do as a combat soldier in the occupied territories. And during that time, from time to time, some questions popped up, and you kind of caught yourself, what are we doing here? Isn't it right or wrong? Maybe with this we crossed the line or not. But very fast you find the way to push things aside and continue on, because you're a professional soldier and you have bigger things than you to fulfill and to complete the mission. And as time goes on, you become more and more numb and think more and more about yourself. Later on, you become a commander. It's even worse, because you know that if you will stop to think, it's not only you, it's 50 soldiers behind you who will start to think. And that's the worst thing that can happen to a soldier. I think it started something around when I was a company sergeant towards the end of my service in the beginning of 2004. I was just sitting down with myself, and in 3 months I'm going to give back my weapon, give back my uniform, start my civilian life, and suddenly cutting myself, trying to think, what do I want to do in my life, and which kind of life do I want to live? You might call it a moment of enlightenment. That was the moment that I felt there. It was like the first second that you stop thinking or seeing things as a professional combat soldier and you start seeing things as a civilian. Stop seeing things from inside and you start observing them from outside. And in that second, it's like, it was a very terrifying moment, because in 1 second, I found myself losing justification for 90% of actions that I took part in. Suddenly, all the military way of thinking and language that justified the actions that I was participating in or carrying out suddenly didn't make sense anymore. And suddenly you kind of realize that the situation you took part in took so much, I don't know what would be the right word to say, violence out of you. And when I felt that, I realized that I felt that I can't continue my life without doing something about it. And I started chatting with my comrades back then. And I discovered that we all felt the same. we all felt that something is wrong. We all felt that things are mad and everything is not going in the right direction. I don't know if it was we didn't have the courage to speak about it, we weren't able to put it into words, but it's kind of something we never spoke inside. So we gathered together, and basically this is how Breaking the Silence started. People who served with me in my unit in Hebron for a year and 2 months. We started talking about what we've done and what we've seen, and opened our photo albums, and that's when we realized that for us the most important thing was once we realized that people back home have no clue of what we're doing, and people outside of, people who weren't there have no clue of what does it mean occupation. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is being discussed in a lot of forums for years, in a lot of different, a lot of different aspects, a lot of different angles, but there is one thing that we kind of realized that no one is talking about, and that's the reality behind the headlines, behind the big titles in the newspaper. And this is what we decided to do, to try to tell the story of the small stories of reality behind the titles through an eye of a soldier. So we really picked up a collection of pictures that in our eyes tells the best the reality of occupation. We had with us very harsh pictures, and we've done very nasty stuff and very, very disgusting stuff and bad stuff. But we've realized that the story is not the extreme cases. The story is not nasty stuff. The story is the banal reality that allows these extreme cases to become a routine. These very, very bad stuff that we've done become logic to us. This is what also I'm going to try to do now, not to get into the horrifying stories, to really try to paint a picture from a collection of very, very daily stuff, or routine stuff that I've done. We picked to start our exhibition with basically a photograph of this poster that you see. This is a poster that settlers in Hebron have put on the wall, calling for soldiers to refuse to evacuate settlements. And it says, "Soldier, commander, you should distinguish between good and evil, between a lover to an enemy. The Israeli Defense Forces is the Israeli army. You should expel the enemies," meaning the Palestinians, not expel lovers, meaning the Israelis. But we try to take this poster out of context and start the exhibition with this picture, focusing on the first sentence. "Soldier, commander, you should distinguish between good and evil." Now, you hear this sentence and makes sense. Good, evil. These are moral codes we all grew up on. Everybody knows there are things that are right, there are things that are wrong, they're black and white. Until the first step that I stepped into the occupied territories, things were also obvious for me. I grew up on special things that are right and special things that are wrong. But the first second you step into the occupied territories is like taking all your morality, all the right and wrong, all the ideology, putting it into a blender, turning it on for 1 minute, and there's nothing left. And I think this is a story from a life of living that, you have black and white. From now anymore, there is no black and white. Everything is gray. And that's why everything is white. Because who are the good people? We are the good people, right? We can't be the right people. We're the good people, and good people do only good stuff. And this is the kind of mindset that you start to enter, that everything you do and everything that is going around you makes sense. This living in this grayness reality starts from the very, very, very routine stuff you see around. This is a Palestinian kid through a scope of a sniper, feeding his pigeons on the roof. In order to take this picture, the guy had to really, aim at him, wait for at least like 2-3 minutes, play with the zoom. I kind of stopped to think for a second, when was the first time that I remember a Palestinian kid through my scope? It was after a week that I was in Hebron. I just finished my professional infantry training was sent to the field. Hebron was the first place that I reached. And I was standing in a post. It was Friday noon. And suddenly I heard like a noise of metal hitting the ground. I look in between my legs. It was an hand grenade. Thanks God it didn't explode, so I'm still alive. It took me a few seconds to recover. And as a good soldier, I load my weapon, jump for the first corner, come to shoot. The street is empty. I jump for the next corner. I open the safety. I come to shoot, but I froze. It took me like 2 minutes to start to move again. It was a Palestinian kid, something like this height, playing a ball in the street. From time to time, I caught myself, thinking, what would happen if the exact same story would happen to me, not in my first week there, but after half a year? If it wasn't the first time, if it was the 100th time. It's like a combat soldier, you grow up, you're educated, a weapon is a killing machine. And with a weapon you don't play, but very fast you become very, very numb, and everything becomes a game around. So you aim on the Palestinians, you aim on your friends with loaded weapons. Nothing more is like you're used to. I don't know what you feel when you see these pictures. For me, this is the image of a Palestinian, I can say. If you see a Palestinian who is not handcuffed and not blindfolded, you kind of ask questions, what's going on here? Why isn't he in the Palestinian position? We have in the occupied territories, we have two kinds of handcuffed and blindfold Palestinians. We have the wanted terrorists. These are the people, Secret Service gives us information, address, number, We come in the middle of the night, surround the house, bump into the house, get the guy, handcuffed, blindfold. He's waiting like this till the Secret Service will pick them up. And then we have all the detainees, the people that we dry out. People who broke curfew. Curfew means you're not allowed to leave the house. Someone gets out during curfew. You catch him, handcuffed, blindfold. You dry him out. It can be 2 hours, can be 4 hours, 7 hours, whatever. This is a picture from Hebron, just that you get the numbers and understanding. During the years 2001 till the end of 2003, Palestinians of Hebron were under curfew for 377 days. Everyone who goes out, you stand in a checkpoint, you have this, you call some Palestinian, he smiles too much to you, you can dry him out. You broke up with your girlfriend last night, so you're mad. Every second guy you'll bump into the street, you'll dry him out. I'm not exaggerating at all. This is the kind, you have the power, so why not? So, and this is the thing you're used to, a Palestinian is not anymore an equal human being that you stand in front of. You finish your duty, you come to the club near the gym, in Nablus, and he's in the same position. He's like a nice monument that you take a picture, you smile with. There's no real way to feel towards him. This is a Palestinian kid that broke curfew, that was detained for around 14 hours in our barrack. Like in a military barrack, you're not allowed to smoke all around. There's only one corner you're allowed to smoke because of all the explosives around. So this is like the place where we used to smoke and play chess. The soldier who took the photograph, who shot this photograph, saw the kid. But if you can recognize from far away the faces of the people around, they don't see him. And I think this is one of the very, very basic slide that you go down to, more and more numb, more and more corrupt, less and less feeling, less and less understanding around you. course, in the introduction, you spoke about the settlements. Of course, there's another aspect of the reality in the West Bank, and that's settlers. This is a picture of settler girls, boys with the mother nearby, of course not stopping them, are breaking a Palestinian shop. And this is one thing that is also very important when we talk about, the reality of occupation, is that you have in one area, in one zone in the West Bank, you have two communities who live, settlers beside Palestinians, under two different systems of law, executed by two different forces. As soldiers, our orders were, we see a Palestinian being attacked by a settler, we can't do nothing. We are here to enforce martial law on settlers. Only if the Palestinians will start to attack, we have to arrest the Palestinian. So you stand in the post 10 meters from this picture, and the best thing you can do is shoot a picture and maybe go on the radio and call the police and hope that the police will come to enforce Israeli law on the settlers. Which of course is not being done, probably for political reasons. And another leftover of settler violence from Hebron. One of the things we used to do a lot is taking over Palestinian houses. You occupy a city, you need posts, you need to be protected, you enter two houses, put snipers, observe streets. We always grew up in Israel that, although history has proved that occupation forces become corrupt till their roots and took down their civil society with, that we can do it different. That we can occupy with silk gloves, do it nice, neat, and clean. And during my service, I really believed in this. So when we started, like in the beginning of 2002, the idea started to, to invade Palestinian cities and taking over houses. Our rules were very strict. Because we're the good guys, we have to treat the house nicely, not damage anything around. Believe it or not, even the first houses we entered, we even washed the house before we left. So we would enter to a house, build these posts. In the beginning, the rules were, you can touch things, destroy things, or damage things only if it's for an operational needs, let's put it in this phrase, what you need to conduct, to fulfill your mission. So you need to take around the chairs and tables and then build this post. But after being like a few days in this place, you start starting to feel at home. And after a few more days, or a few more houses, you're kind of get bored and you start to break things. Or another great example to, a good example to understand this, how numb you become. We were in an operation near Ramallah, in the center of the West Bank, searching operation, which means you go for 4, 5, 6 days, 18 to 20 hours a day on your feet, crossing from one house to another, hundreds of houses. It was during the World Cup. I don't have to complete the story, right? Don't we deserve to watch a great match that is now, it was Argentina against, I forgot the second country. So you look around, they have a satellite plate. It's a kind of place where you just can do whatever you want, right? Take a taxi to a ride in Jericho. Defensive Shield Operation, April 2002, the refugee camp of Jenin. After 2 very deadly months in Israel, over 120 civilians being murdered in suicide bombing attacks, Defensive Shield Operation was launched. I think the story behind this picture is a great example. How you cross these red lines slowly, slowly, line after line. The forces are inside the refugee camp of Jenin, and you ran out of water. It was after the big battle that 13 soldiers were killed. A lot of houses were destroyed. The D9, the big bulldozers that you demolish houses with, on the way into the refugee camp, were too wide for the streets. Took down part of the walls around. This was a wall of a Palestinian grocery store that was right in the torn. And the forces are in Jenin, ran out of water. One of the officers goes on the radio and says, look, to one of the commanders, take your APC, armored personnel carrier, like a tank without a cannon that you carry out troops around. You remember at the entrance to the refugee camp, there was a grocery store. The bulldozer took down the wall. Get in there, bring only water. Don't take anything else. Only water. This is what we need. So they come, go down to the grocery store, start loading water. There are cigarettes there. After a week in battle, you ran out of cigarettes. So you load also cigarettes. Chocolates won't be good. And you can try, again, to imagine yourself, how did it end? I bring up this story because after just giving small examples, I want to go back to maybe to where I start about the blender and maybe go back to my personal story. The story behind this picture is my blender. It's the moment that I kind of lost the ability to understand. This is the Abu Snana neighborhood in Hebron, a Palestinian neighborhood in Hebron. As I said in the beginning, Hebron is the second largest Palestinian city with around 166,000 Palestinians. It's a very unique city because of its religious importance with the Tomb of the Patriarchs, where fathers and mothers of both nations are buried. It's the only Palestinian city that has an Israeli settlement in the heart of the city. Around 800 to 1,000 settlers living like in urban settlements, stuck 2-3 buildings in the middle of a very heavy populated area, urban area, you can see. The Israeli settlement is somewhere here in the valley. This picture is taken from top of the hill, Jabal Jual, another Palestinian neighborhood. In the beginning of a part of the Oslo process, mid-90s, going towards the Second Intifada, Hebron was divided. Part of Hebron was ruled by the Palestinian Authority, and part of Hebron remained, around the settlements basically, remained under Israeli control. And in the beginning of the Second Intifada, the Palestinians used to shoot every night from top to hill, Palestinian neighborhoods, on the settlements in the valley. Now we, the IDF, we had no idea who was shooting and from where, but we can't remain quiet while our settlements are being shot at, right? So the decision was to take over 3 high posts. One was a Palestinian family house somewhere in the corner of the neighborhood here. You just enter to the house, give the family 40 minutes to pack up. They leave. Until today, the house is an IDF post. So for almost 7 years, family is out. The second is right across the valley, a rooftop of a Palestinian family. And the third is where this picture is taken from the school barrack. We call it the school because it was a Palestinian school. For 4.5 years, we closed down the school and turned it into a barrack. put snipers, machine guns, grenade machine guns in these 3 posts, and the idea was they shoot, we shoot back. Now we have no idea who is shooting, so every post like that had empty or abandoned buildings in the neighborhood in front of it as a targets, like 10 to 15 targets like that. This was the nylon factory, 3 floors, 4 windows, the greenhouses. These were targets in this neighborhood. So in my professional infantry training, I was trained as a grenade machine gun operator, which is a very heavy machine gun that fires grenades to almost a distance of almost 2 miles away. And my first day was in the exact place that this picture was taken from, the grenade machine gun post inside the school. And I just arrived. Shai, my platoon officer, is briefing me. Look, Yehuda, our mission is, they shoot, see these in these buildings, we shoot back. Now, the first second that I heard my mission, I freaked out. It doesn't make sense. Me shooting grenades into a neighborhood? 3 months ago, I was trained in this machine gun. I was somewhere in the desert in the south of Israel. In order to shoot 3 live grenades, the safety rules were that no one is allowed to be 1.5 kilometers away from each side of the target. Now, 2 very important things to mention here. First of all, we're talking about grenades, not bullets. A grenade hits something, explodes it, kills everyone in a radius of 8 meters, injures everyone in a radius of 16 meters. Second, the machine gun is not an accurate weapon. You don't aim at your target, you pull the trigger, and the target is down. And there is a reason why I use this professional language. The machine gun is more or less a statistical weapon. You aim to the area of your target, you shoot, you see where you hit, you fix your aiming a bit to the left, up, down, try again. If you're a real good operator, you'll probably hit your target 5th or 6th time. So the first night after the Palestinians shoot, the order comes out of the radio. It was called Ghost Town. And you approach the machine gun and you still know that, things still seem black and white. But this is the reason why we're here. This is the only reason to close down the school for 4.5 years, to post their machine guns, to shoot back. So you aim to the area of your target, you pull the trigger, you leave it as fast as you could. And inside of you just pray that the less amount of grenades were fired, because if you'll pull the trigger for 1 minute, 80 grenades will be out there. And then you have these 4 or 5 seconds till the grenade reaches the line of the targets. We're talking about a neighborhood where people live, like a bit more than a mile away. And you just hope you never hurt anyone. The next night, you're less tense. The third night, you're less tense. And after a week, that's the most exciting moment of the day. What's more fun than playing a video game, doing the real stuff for free? Now, there is a reason why I stick to the mission, why I stick to the orders, and I'm not starting to talk about, after a month that it's not exciting anymore to shooting grenades. You're just pissed off on this because you have to clean the machine gun after you shoot. And you want to go to sleep, so you start to play the games with the sniper a mile away, that yellow car, the back right tire, you think $5 you could nail it 5. No. I'm sticking with the mission. This was the reason for what we did. But we must do that. Reaction fire, we call it. They shoot. After a few weeks, it didn't work. Those Palestinians, they didn't get the message. So we decided we won't wait for them to shoot. From now on, every day, 5:30, before it gets dark, before they shoot, we will shoot to deter them. The torrance fire, we call it. So 5:30, the order comes out. Till 6:15. Try to imagine it. 10 to 13 machine guns around the city. Shoot. 6:15, we stop. 6:30, it gets dark. They shoot. Now we have to respond. And after this didn't work also, The decision was to try to invade the Palestinian-controlled part of the city and do what we call their violent patrols. Just drive through streets, shoot at houses, blow up some parked cars with grenades. We call it trying to make our presence felt. Of course, led by company officers, decisions not made by low-rank soldiers or commanders like me, talking about brigade officers and higher. I'm not saying it to take off responsibility for myself. I'm saying it just that we understand that this numbness and this corruption doesn't stop in the level of a soldier and that takes pictures through a scope. Now, I brought up this story because when we call ourselves breaking the silence, we refer to two levels of silences that we have to break. And the first one is the personal one. It's first of all us, people who were there, to break our own silence to understand what we've done and what was going around us. Because back then it made sense. And the second one is the silence of, I don't know how to put it, media, society, establishment. For 4 months I was there almost every night shooting. My parents woke up the next morning in Jerusalem, turned on the radio and heard a sentence that every Israeli can completely by heart. IDF forces returned fire to the source of fire in Hebron. I don't remember one time we recognized sources of fire. But then it's kind of doomed to you that this is the way people outside of this reality know what's going on, get their information. A few months later, when we occupied all parts of Hebron, this is a Palestinian house. Picture from the other side that was hit. This is a Palestinian house up the West Bank and Salfit village, a Palestinian village, up the north. Every time something would happen in the area, you would shoot. Just kind of finish with this story, just to continue what, this aspect of silence that we're speaking about. This is a collection of Palestinian car keys that were confiscated by us. The story behind is, one day I found myself reading a newspaper, an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, very liberal newspaper. And you read the story about some village, some Palestinian village in the north of the West Bank, that at the entrance to the village there is a checkpoint and there is a yellow line in front of the checkpoint, and every Palestinian that crosses the yellow line without permission, the soldiers confiscate his car keys. And you read another story and another one and another one and you reach the end. IDF spokesman responds. Confiscating keys is illegal. It probably didn't happen. If it happened, it's an exceptional case. We will investigate it and bring to trial the guy. This is a box, right nearby, in the same room that I was sitting reading the newspaper. A box of almost 100 car keys, 1 month, 1 checkpoint. And these are the keys that we had, we brought from the checkpoint to the barrack and put it into the box, which is too much for a soldier to do. Then you call yourself, my parents read this newspaper and they really believe it. They really believe that this is not happening. They really believe that in this situation you have things that are legal and things that are not legal, and that you can compare it to the situation where to the reality around you inside Israel. Now, as I said in the beginning, I really stuck to the very, very basic and banal things around what I've experienced and all over 500 members of our group experience. I just want to finish with reading a testimony, just to try to give the perspective of where this leads to. As I said towards the end, as time went by for us in breaking the science, we realized and we learned stuff. Every day that goes by, we learn more and more. Every day we break more and more levels of silence inside of us. And after a year, mid-2005, a year after we started, we caught ourselves in a place where, after interviewing over 150 soldiers and ex-soldiers, we realized that the materials we have speak and pinpoint on a different level that from where we started. If we started from the very, very banal stories of regular lower-rank soldiers in the field, suddenly we caught ourselves in a situation where we can stand up and improve and show. We have this expression in Hebrew, adag masriach me'arosh, the fish stinks from its head, not from the tail. But after 40 years of rooting other people's life, 40 years that the IDF, this is what is dealing with, of course, the past 20 years, way more intensively, first intifada, second intifada, this corruption reached tail the head. And basically, the fear from that is what drives us. And we did a big publication about the IDF rules of engagement, which are, the rules of engagement are probably the least part from our, from our side of the conflict. And of course, are way more systematic and built and structured into the military than the way that a soldier behaves in a checkpoint. So I just want to give an example where this corruption process can lead and where it led some of us. This is a testimony of a soldier from an elite unit. And this is what we do in Breaking the Science. Basically, the heart of our activity is interviewing, videotaping, audiotaping soldiers. So we come to interview the guy, put the microphone. Let's start with the things you want to tell, the things lying heavy on your heart. And this is how he starts. What disturbs me the most and what bothers me the most is the lack of value of human life in the occupied territories. Of course, not that of Israelis. When my friend was killed, his squad commander was killed, I caught myself suddenly saying, Wallah. Here's a man gone in the middle of his life, a person whose life has stopped. All the aspects of a human being, his aspirations, what he was, what he said, the happy moments of his life, his friends. A man's life has lots of aspects. And all of a sudden, everything stopped. And then it dawned on me that this was a death of a human being. And then you started thinking, voila, what about all these people we killed? And my team killed 6 innocent people, or at least apparently innocent people. Some were killed by mistake, really by mistake. But what's a mistake? Really say, we're sorry we killed your husband, your daughter, your child, or your grandfather, or wherever else. And there were those executed in orders that, in my opinion, were illegal. We got in for many nights into the Kasbah of Nablus, the old city of Nablus, and our firing orders were between 2 to 4 a.m. Anybody spotted in the Kasbah is doomed to die. These were the words, doomed to die. And we asked him who spoke these words, the company commander in the briefings before missions. And he continues on. And in order to deal with what they've done, the only way is being cynical about it. Everyone got a name. The drummer, the baker, the scout, the child, the woman, the old man. The drummer was one that was killed by mistake. They were in an operation, an arrest operation in the old city of Nablus during the Ramadan. They had no clue that in the Ramadan, the Muslim fast, early in the morning, before the fast starts, people with drums walk in the streets to wake up people to eat before the fast. They were surrounding a house. Everything is dark around. A guy is walking in the street with something. They shout at him to stop. He looks around, doesn't understand what's going on, and starts running. They shoot him. They see a drum. The baker was just in the wrong place in the wrong time. They were in an ambush inside the old city, and he was walking between 2 to 4. Shot him, came close, verified his death, opened the bag, pita buns. He's the baker. Now, I bring up this story not because this is something that everyone did, but for me as an Israeli, it's terrifying enough to understand that there are some people in my generation that this is what they did. And a lot of the rest of my generation, this is what they did, and this is what I did, to drive me to do what I do. We see the act of breaking the silence as a way of taking responsibility. We can't go back in time and change things we've done. But at least we can stand up and say the truth. And we can demand from others to take responsibility. Because once you grow up, you realize that responsibility doesn't start and ends with being an ex-soldier who speaks out. Responsibility doesn't even start with and ends with being an Israeli. Of course, Israelis have more responsibility. Responsibility starts and ends with being human beings. And if you care for your country and if you care for your society, you have to scream and yell and demand from people to take human responsibility over this, to stop it. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm really thankful for all the sponsors of this event, and thank you for coming.
Yehuda, thank you. That was a very moving and honest, simple but infinitely powerful presentation. I know all of you have some questions and comments, so please raise your hand. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for your presentation and for your courage. My question is how your family responded to your starting this organization and what you have to say.
Yes.
I can't get rid of this question, huh? It's a tough one. Generally, we just try not to mix business and pleasure. My sister is a settler today. No. In Gush Etzion settlement block, if it makes sense. So mainly, the majority of my family doesn't really, we're trying to avoid these issues, to stay a family. My father is the only one that kind of went through something, through just kind of process after we started what we did and what we started in Breaking the Silence. The first reaction of the IDF to our exhibition and to our activity in 2004 was 3 weeks after we opened the exhibition. Military police investigators broke into the exhibition, confiscated some stuff, and we were all called for interrogations. Now, basically, the idea was to try, and this is something that we as Breaking the Silence feel and believe that is a very strong aspect of the silence of a society, and that's believing in the old ways of trialing soldiers who did wrong things. But in that way, cleaning our conscience as a society, you know. And the idea was to try to uncover the identity of soldiers who gave testimonies. Because all the testimonies we publish are anonymity. We keep the identity of our sources in a way we see ourselves in a very fundamental way in place as journalists. If Israeli journalists would do their job during the Second Intifada, there was no need for us. And they wanted to know where the people who are speaking and the video testimonies that are part of the exhibition, trial them, send them to jail, and that way close down this project. Because it doesn't matter what bad things you've done and how you feel about it, what do you think about it today. Once you know the next day you'll go to jail. So this was an introduction to my father's story. After like 2 weeks, we opened the exhibition. My father came to the exhibition. And we were there guiding tours, taking people around, telling our personal story. Of course, it was the first time that I spoke with my father about it. And I took him around just like I take everyone. And he finished the tour. There were monitors with video testimonies. He puts some earphones on him, listens to the testimonies, and he reached a place. Like after a few minutes, he calls me, Yehuda, this is what you did? And I'm looking at the screen. I see the captions. I immediately recognize this is a testimony one of my soldiers is telling about a funeral we dismissed in the middle to enforce curfew. We didn't allow the family to finish burying their loved. And I look, and I answer in the only way you can answer, right? In a cynical way, I said, "Hey, but Father, not only funerals, also also weddings." And he just put down the earphones and left the gallery without really responding. And a week later, military police investigators broke in. We were called to interrogations. The day after they broke in, we were interrogated. And from the interrogation rooms, I came to the bat mitzvah of my younger sister. And that's where my father took me aside. He already knew about it. We read in the newspaper. And he told me, "Look, Yehuda, I understand what you're doing. I'm behind you." And since then, almost 4 years, we've never spoke about it.
Sorry, can you speak into the mic a bit more? We can't hear at the back. Thanks.
Ellen Siegel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is beyond me to understand why Israel doesn't realize that the Palestinians are not going to go quietly into that good night, and what it's going to take to stop all of this, number one. Number two, I keep hearing about how the Israelis don't know what's going on. There was Yesh Gavul before you all. There's Amir Ahas. There are many people that talk about the atrocities that are going on. And lastly, if you were called again to go to the West Bank, would you go?
So I don't think I'm in a position of answering, giving this big political analysis about your first question, how does Israelis don't understand that Palestinians won't disappear. How do Israelis don't know? There was Yesh Gvul in 82, refused next to the first Lebanese war, and later on other groups, and Amir Ahas writing. Look, you have to understand, the way that I see it is, I realize silence is not an Israeli sickness. Silence is a human disease. And everyone whose face is ugly makes everything not to stand in front of a mirror. And you have to, and I think another very important thing that kind of put it into a context is that a lot of times for people outside of Israel it's very easy to understand. It's very easy to understand, an occupation is like a math equation. 1 + 1 ends 2. Military ruling civilians for over 40 years starts like that, ends like that, right? Very simple, it's there. No one is immune, you can't avoid. It's in the nature of the job. But for Israelis to understand, for an Israeli mother to believe that, is to realize that her son that is now in Jenin is acting the same. That her husband, that she sleeps with every night, till the age of 40, you don't end military service in Israel after 3 years of mandatory service. If you are a combat soldier till the age of 40, 1 month every year, reserve duty. Because we're so close, it's so part of us, wall of silence must be higher. I think that's a very basic thing. As much you're involved, you're more silent. You more don't want to believe that it's you. That it's, it's an exceptional case. It's rat and apples. There is every situations of occupation all around have the same lines to the press, have the same lines to remain silent, have the same. It's only people who come from bad social economical background. It's just an exceptional case. It's only this unit or this place or this day. It's not everyone. And for the last question, whether when they call me to the service and the West Bank, do I go or not, I'll prefer not to answer the question. And I'll try to explain why. As breaking the silence, our mandate is very limited. We're here about telling the stories, the testimonies, putting the truth on the table, and demand from others to ask the tough questions, and demand from everyone to ask what we see as, I think, the most important question for a society that wants to be a democratic society, and that's what is the moral boundaries of our society? To what extent we stand behind our military and when we say no, not in our name. What is the red line? And basically for me saying whether I serve or not is telling you my red lines. And as a member of a group, I stand there on behalf of breaking the silence. We don't have a line that all the group agrees. So in breaking the silence, you have people who go, and you have people who don't. Everyone takes his own decision.
Jim Vittorello, and let's take 2 or 3 questions at a time.
Yeah, I'm Jim Vittorello with Sharing Jerusalem and the Washington Interfaith Alliance for Middle East Peace. Speaking of the wall of silence, of course, we have a huge one in this country, particularly in Washington, in general, and specifically in the so-called mainline Jewish community. So, in that regard, have you ever attempted to contact, through your friends here, like Brit Tzedek and others, to actually address the American Jewish Committee, B'nai B'rith, AIPAC, go to mainline synagogues like Washington Hebrew, where they have some of those rabbis are very sympathetic, at least privately. At least where they have the courage to come, to invite you to speak to the membership and get another side of the story, because I guarantee you they don't know about this. Well, they may know about it, but they sure as heck don't talk about it.
Another question? Steve Riskin.
Just to follow on previous questions, what is your, assuming you are a member of an active faith-based community, what has been the reaction of your own rabbi, and what has been the nature of your discussions with your rabbi about this?
Yes, in back, please.
I'd like to know, during the training process, do the soldiers go through any kind of ethical or sensitivity training at all? This is something I've wondered about for a long time. Thank you.
Just writing it down, I won't forget the. About the Jewish community in the States, we're very excited in this tour when we bring we brought the exhibition now in Philadelphia. Later on, will be shown in Harvard University, and of course the co-sponsors are all of them Jewish groups here in the States, and I don't think we're reaching hard mainstream and right here in the Jewish community, but of course these would be our most important target audience. because of their care for Israel and for the Jewish states, they must understand this price tag and must understand this reality in order to make the right decisions for Israel and for us as a nation. But we're very excited that in this tour we're speaking a lot in Jewish, if it could be, I don't know, schools or a few synagogues around the country. And basically that's the main target group in this tour.
And they were open to...
We'll see. You have to enter and leave alive. But yeah, I believe they are, yeah. My rabbi, in Israel it's a bit different, the structure of a community and a rabbi. So there is no like... Let me put it this way. From the place where I come from, I'm not a member of, and I left it for my own, decision, and I'm now... the synagogue where I pray is a synagogue that is open to these kind of ideas. There is a few of them in Jerusalem that are more open to really follow Jewish values. And for the last question about ethical training, as a matter of fact, yes. But it doesn't help, believe it or not. There's two different, training. Let's put it, first of all, look. When I was trained to fight the Syrian army. And the day will come, if it will come, I hope not, to war, fight an army. I wasn't trained to be an occupier. But the power of occupation is that you don't have to be trained to do it. It's enough that you're there, and you're more than trained to do it. It's a kind of a place that you just step in, something in the oxygen tells you what you have to do and what not. What is your position and what is going around. About ethical training, the IDF has an ethical code, an ethical moral code, with a lot of very good values that probably, I hope that everyone here in the room will sign. Equality of human life, or what we call purity of arms, the soldier shouldn't use is force against innocent people, and other different values. But the thing is that because of the nature of occupation, there is no way to do it in an ethical way. Sorry for taking the time.
It's very important.
I'll share a story. When I was a sergeant, Thursday afternoon, sitting down with the soldiers, going over the ethical code, having these. Most of the units in the IDF don't really, take it serious, but the unit that I served is a very unique unit and very, in this way, serious unit. And every week we would sit down and have these moral discussions. Thursday afternoon, I sit down with the soldiers, going through, equality of human life, purity of arms, talking about the week that just passed. That's 4 to 5, 5 o'clock finish, 5:15, stand to a briefing, 5:30, you start a patrol in the old city of Hebron. Now you walk in the patrol, and after a few hours you see a suspicious bag in the side of the road. It could be garbage, or it could be a bomb. What do we do? The way I see it, you have 3 options. One is to shoot. If it's a bomb, it will explode. If not. 2 is to call a bomb engineer. All these things we've done in different places, different. 3rd is to grab the first Palestinian in the street, send him to pick it up. If it's a bomb, it would explode. If not. What do you think I did? You grab the first Palestinian, send him to pick it up. Not because I was standing there and said, okay, how can I do an evil thing? Because this is the procedure, this is what you do. So an hour ago, we were talking about equality of human life, and now the life of a randomly Palestinian is worth less than 20 minutes waiting to the bomb engineer, or a quarter, which will probably cost one bullet of an M16? It's built in the situation that there is no way you can follow it. Do it in a nice way. Now, the thing is that if you stop for a second and you think as a soldier, it even makes sense to grab the first Palestinian. Think for a second. If the Palestinians will know that every time we see a suspicious bomb, we will send one of them, they won't booby-trap the streets. Make sense? But you think that after I'm using this tactic, I could really see a Palestinian as an equal human being to me? And again, this is a very banal story. We can continue this example for, third step, fifth step, with the same example, where it leads, but just the time.
Why do you not use the first option? Shoot at it.
Look, in more combat situations, like when we used to invade cities, we would shoot. But that means also shooting in cars. Like a car is not parked in the right way. It can be, a bomb, so you shoot it. So again, everything has. Why? Just because there's no reason why. This is what you do as a soldier. This is the procedures. This is the way you do things. This is how it works.
Tom Veblen.
I'm curious, has the IDF continued to attempt to shut you down?
No. No.
Why not?
I think they realized that it just makes more publicity to our cause. And later on, we just received the bear hug. The hug that chokes you. The chief of staff stood up and said, soldiers should break the silence. And after the chief of staff said that, there's nothing new that you can say, right? From then, I would say around 3 to 5 times a year we are invited to speak inside the IDF, in front of forums of officers, basically a level of company officers and higher. We don't believe in it. We don't believe it can work. We don't believe you can speak with a soldier while he's serving and really bring him to understand what we understand today, but we do it. But in generally, and this is, I think, a very important thing for me to say is, as breaking the silence, we don't speak with the IDF. We speak about the IDF with civil society that owns the IDF. We really don't believe that the IDF has a different way of doing it. There is no different way of doing it. And this is why what's important is not to speak with the IDF, is to speak with civil society that sends the IDF, that gives the IDF, our army, the missions. This is an imminent price that I don't believe that the IDF can avoid. You can't bump into a house 3 o'clock in the morning through the roof, wake up the family, and what, give candies? It will never work. This is something that is, everyone who is responsible for taking these decisions has to understand the price. Of course, this equation has a lot of different factors in it, this is one of it, and in our eyes, this is the most important one.
Sir. And one more question back here.
I'm very appreciative of your describing this process, because I think it's something that the United States needs to go through itself in re-examining our political and military activities. And I'm curious, what evidence is there about how the Israeli civil society is reacting to this process? Is there evidence of taking responsibility for this individually and collectively?
And in the back, one more question in the back.
What further is your perspective on the Christian presence in the West Bank, and what kind of interaction do they have with the Israeli soldiers? Have any expressed to you their belief that they're called to be there for a divine purpose?
Would you mind clarifying that question? Which Christians are you speaking of? Palestinian Christians?
Well, I was interested in any type of Christian, yeah, those that have been there historically and those that may have moved there, thinking, you know, in fact, that may be part of the last question I was raising, if they believe they on a mission, you know, for God there.
So answering the first one, I think the Israeli society is far away of taking responsibility on a collective stage, but on the individual you see, as time goes by, more and more people, or nothing, small numbers, but still growing up. I don't think you change a society in one day, and not in 10 years. But look, 99% of our work is in Israel. And probably besides what we consider the heart of our work of interviewing soldiers and publishing the testimonies, we do a lot of educational work. If it's speaking in front of groups or high school students or pre-military academy or youth movement, and if it's taking people to guided tours to Hebron. And every year we find ourselves speaking at least, you know, doing like at least around 80 presentations in front of Israeli youth, and taking, just in 2007, we've taken over 3,000 people to visit Hebron. You know, if the goal of breaking the silence was to bring Hebron to Tel Aviv, which is the place that symbolizes the silence in Israel, now it's kind of, we're going back, taking Tel Aviv to Hebron. So there is a lot of work being done, and there are a lot of, and because of the identity of the group, which is, as a group, we try to avoid the big political solutions, and because of who is behind the group, who we are soldiers, we did our job, you send us there, now we come back to society, we just ask you to listen. It helps us to reach way more mainstream audience inside Israel. But no, Israel society is not standing in line to confront this reality. About the Christian Palestinians, I don't know. I've never seen it in this way when I was there. I never saw, you know, these are Christians, these are Muslims, these are... It's very clear that there is an us and them thing. And that goes very strong also in Hebron, because you see these, you know, you see the settlers, but still they are us, right? It's very hard to, sometimes, yeah, sometimes Israeli settlers, sometimes they beat you up as a soldier, but in your mind, they are with you. You are there to protect them. This is the reason why you're there. And this is something very important, I think, to understand. Like, when I was patrolling Hebron, when I was standing in a post to Hebron, I wasn't defending Jerusalem. I was defending the settlement of Hebron. That was my mission on the wall. That was what I felt I did, and what I know I did. And this is the price. You want to defend the settlements. This is what you have, byproduct. The only interaction that I had with Christians was with CPT, Christian Peacemaking Team, and Hebron. Yeah.
That was positive?
For me, it was. Really depends on, you know, a personal soldier. Every soldier finds it. This is the, I think, from my service, I remember the only, like, interaction with Christians, you know, like knowing this title of, you know, recognizing, identifying someone as.
Yehuda, I have a question. Besides performing your duty to protect Israeli citizens in the West Bank, you and your colleagues and the leadership, the officer corps, the IDF, is there an ideological, political sympathy and identification with settlers and the settlement movement in the IDF? Are they simply neutral toward the settlements? Or are many of them intellectually opposed to the idea of settlement?
It's very diverse. It depends by unit. I served in a very unique unit, which is not an example. Of my friends in Breaking the Silence today laugh at me that I didn't serve in the IDF. I served in the Nachal Brigade, which is a very a leftist brigade, a leftist battalion, more to say. But the thing is that it doesn't matter from where you come from, whether you believe in settlements or not, whether you oppose politically the idea of occupation or not, you end up doing exactly the same things, you end up thinking exactly the same things, and you end up following exactly the same logic and procedures. So it doesn't matter if I can, I can think of the settlers of Hebron as mad people who go and spray these graffitis that really want me to go to jail and not defend them. But the bottom line, I'm a soldier, and this is what I have to do, and they are on our side. They're the good guys. The other people are the bad guys. And this is your duty. And very fast, in a lot of stories, and in Hebron, it's a good example. You kind of get an understanding of the amount of political power that this movement has inside the higher ranks in the IDF and inside the political spectrum of Israel.
Thank you. There was a question here and then another over here.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for your courage. I'm a clinical and political psychologist, so I study these kind of phenomenon. And, I think perhaps other people here, a lot of the images remind us of certain things that are happening in Iraq, breaking into houses and some of the dehumanization. So, one is that these phenomena have been pretty well studied. Also, people, like you mentioned, there's dehumanization. People are more dangerous when they're afraid. A lot of people are acting out of fear. And Robert J. Lifton talks about, psychic numbing, but also that it's you create an atrocity-producing situation, and that what's going on is a function of the occupation, asymmetrical power, and that people are also kind of caught up in a double bind where they can't get out of what they have to do to help the situation they're afraid of. So they can't get out of it. Like, to end the occupation would reduce the violence, but so I just wanted to make some comments about that. There were also a lot of psychological experiments, like Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiments, where healthy white male college students actually did similar things in an experiment where, with prisoners and guards, and also Milgram's experiments on obedience.
Do you have a question?
Okay. No, that's all. Just that it's more of universal.
Thanks for your comment.
Would you say that the settler movement is holding the Israeli government hostage?
The question was whether I think the settlement movement is holding the Israeli state, Israeli government hostage. A lot of things you see in history and what you see in the ground, brings you to kind of the question whether it's the settlement movement or it's something broader than this in the Israeli politics. It's kind of, I think in Israeli politics, it's a bit difficult to distinguish, for now at least, or for the time that I was in. The differences between mainstream political point of view and the settlement movement. Or Hebron is a good example for that. Like the Hebron settlers, which are considered the most violent and extreme settlers, are really wackos. are considered like very, very out of majority of people in Israel. But the idea of a settlement inside Hebron is a very mainstream idea of our right to have a settlement near the tomb of the patriarchs, near where. So, and it was the either Likud or Labour Party, both parties built this throughout the years. There were some exceptional governments in the past 17 years, but the majority are.
Yes, Kate.
Thanks. Yeah. I have two questions. One is, you've spoken a lot about Hebron, and I just recently finished reading a very interesting book about a former right-wing Jewish settler who is from Chicago, actually, and he's an Orthodox rabbi who had a very was exposed to this that you can't make it black and white, and that was exposed to some very bad behavior on the part of the settlers, and therefore that kind of, what, as he put it, cracked him open. And he's since written a book, You Don't Have to Be Wrong for Me to Be Right. Unfortunately, I can't think of his last name right now. His first name is Brad. My question is, have you heard of him? And if so, have you done anything with him, speaking? He, and this would, I guess, follow on to the earlier question about making inroads within the more mainstream or even right-wing American Jewish community. And then I have one very simple, different question, and that is, now that you are no longer on active military duty and you just do your 1 month reserve service, I'm assuming, what do you do for a living other than breaking the silence? What do you do? And is it in any way related with breaking the silence? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. I'm lucky. My name's Nancy Boardman. Let me ask you a political question. How important do you think our country is in reaching an end to the occupation, in having a settlement where, at least my hope would be, we do have a Palestinian state that truly is secure? How important are we as a country? Behind that, I suppose, would be, if you think we are important, what might we do to further the cause of a Palestinian state?
So, just about this rabbi, Orthodox rabbi, I've never heard about. I'll be happy to get the name and read the book.
Brad Hirschfeld.
Brad Hirschfeld. Okay, we'll do it after. But I really want to emphasize one thing, which is, and that is, in my eyes, it's not the settlers that are the problem. Someone is sponsoring them. Someone wants them to be there. Someone probably, or there are two options when you see this picture, and there are worse pictures than then you kind of ask yourself, there are two options. It's either someone wants them, either they're like an arm of the government that does the real dirty, the work beneath the dirt that you can survive with, or it's just people. The government is afraid of clashing with them. And I don't know what's worse and what's good. If for sure none of these options are good options. But my sense is that there are a lot of forces inside the government that like this. That like this change in the ground being done by someone else. Like this, that this can help us approach a lot of people saying it's not us, it's them. And I would say that also in the process of us, of starting breaking the silence, it was a strong thing that we had to go over. In the beginning, when we, took testimonies, and I went around. We were a group of 65 people in the beginning, and I went around and filmed people with, taking their testimonies, and I had this list of questions that I asked everyone, and everyone was talking about the settlers. Like the settlers, they broke that. What about us? And then, sat down and saw on the monitor all, 30 people talking about settlers, where we are in the picture. This policy that gives us orders that we're not allowed, we have no authorization to stop this. There's, really mad reality where you won't see in Hebron a policeman entering a settlement without IDF protection. The IDF won't have the police because the police presence is provocation. They're there to enforce law on settlers, so their presence is provocation towards the settlers, and we're here to serve the settlers, so nothing really happens. So I don't think the settlers are to blame. It's the settlement policy, maybe. It's something, and that's already politics. So, yeah, to your question. I think the United States plays a major role in ending this conflict. The United States has a lot of responsibility for what's going on there. And what to do with that, I won't tell you. I don't know, maybe. But I believe everyone is smart enough to understand. And this is what Breaking the Silence is all about. Bringing you problems and hope that you will solve them in your way, at least.
We have time for two more brief questions. Sir on the aisle and Mr. Krantz.
One question I have is when the IDF damages property, when the IDF damages Palestinian property or commandeers water or food from a grocery store or whatever, is there a mechanism for compensation and liability, or do you just walk away from it?
No. Maybe there is a procedure of compensating, but more like on a larger level, if like tanks invade a city. But on these small stuff, not that I know. And don't forget that a lot of these stories are things that are, that are not recognized, right? Or are, not acknowledged. That would be the.
Yes, thank you for your presentation this afternoon. I just recently got back from visiting Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum. That particular day when I was there was a day that young Israeli soldiers were given a tour. And I wondered if that's a standard part of the training, if you've received that kind of experience yourself, and if so, what impact might that have had with the occupation?
I hope I'm not wrong, but it's something that every soldier goes through. Visiting Yad Vashem, it's not something that, it's not something unique in Israel. The place where we all come from is, this is our history, and this is an important point in our history and our identity. And probably we see here a very simple cycle of human psychology, of victims become victimizers without noticing it. Because if we're all about protecting our borders all the time, and we're all about security, you kind of sometimes forget that if you're so into that, sometimes the price that you're paying is something that is not even worth. If you come from, and I think this is one of the major or the important part of Breaking the Silence, is to raise exactly this question of where, what does it happen after? Okay, so there is the usual political talk, but what are the consequences of it? Look back home in society, look behind the boundaries into a Palestinian society understand the impact.
We have time for just one more question. Mr. Krause?
Thank you. It's my experience, soldiers in the Second World War or American soldiers or in the Korean War or Vietnam War, those who've been engaged in combat are very reluctant to talk about it and pretty much hold it up inside themselves. And you've been very courageous, as others have mentioned here, to break the silence. I was wondering to what extent you've received sympathy from other Israeli soldiers that have not broken the silence.
First, I think we have to make a difference between war and occupation. There's a categorical difference between war and occupation. And about other soldiers around, just like I think in society. There are soldiers who see it as a very bad, who don't agree with this act. It's very difficult to bring soldiers to speak. Most of them, even if people sympathize with the big political or moral reason behind it, a lot of them tell you, look, these were the worst years of my life, I don't want to open it, or, you know, if my mother will hear what we've done there, you know, she shouldn't know. Most of the people find a way, even if, you know, on an abstract level, they agree with the idea, try to escape it from, for personal reasons. But the fact is that over 500 people have spoken until today, and the list is a long one. And really, I think if going back to the question about the impact, people ask me or ask us about the impact that we had. I think this is the only way that I can really measure it. If you would come to me 4 years ago when we started breaking the silence and tell me that today over 500 people will give their testimony, I'll probably laugh in your face. This is this is a very concrete thing that we can measure. People have now, 500 people have broken their silence and spoke out and give their testimony. And everyone has, people around them. And just circles that I hope will never end.
One final question that many of you may have wondered about. Is there any way that we can view all of the photographs and read all of the testimonies without being able to go to Philadelphia or Boston?
To read all the testimonies is too much. I even didn't read all the testimonies. But yeah, right outside, there are booklets, two different booklets, sorry, one I then forgot to bring with me. 2 different booklets, and a DVD. A DVD basically is the DVD there is a guided tour inside our first exhibition with English subtitles. But for that, we basically charge. There's a basic fee to cover the expenses. It's $5 for the 2 booklets and $10 for the DVD. So that's outside on the way out.
Sure. Phil, can I say something about Thursday evening for 30 seconds? Sure. Well, I can do it then. Yehuda is appearing with another IDF veteran who has very different viewpoints, but is very interested in dialoguing around these issues, and a Jewish educator who is going to look from Jewish sources and traditions at what makes a Jewish army on Thursday night at the Washington, D.C. Jewish Community Center, in light of some of the other conversations about who is being impacted. I believe there's still flyers out there about that, and you can also ask me about it.
Yehuda, thank you for your... Sorry, didn't have more time. Pretty powerful.